In a dramatic and unprecedented diplomatic maneuver, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz has formally requested urgent crisis talk with United States President Donald Trump to be held in Alaska, a location laden with stark geopolitical symbolism. The surprise call for a summit issued directly from the Chancellery in Berlin underscores the profound and escalating anxiety gripping Europe in the face of a collapsing Ukrainian front and a newly assertive BRICS bloc. Merz's proposal seeks to force a moment of absolute clarity on the future of the transatlantic security alliance and America's commitment to defending Europe. The German leader stated that the rapidly deteriorating security situations on the continent's eastern flank necessitates an immediate and unvarnished face-to-face dialogue with his American counterparts away from the traditional pomp of Washington or European capitals. The choice of Alaska, a rugged American frontier state that shares a maritime border with Russia, is a deliberate and powerful signal. It aims to focus the minds of both leaders on the geographic and strategic realities of the renewed great power competitions that now defines the international landscape. This move represents a high-stakes gamble by the German Chancellor, reflecting a growing fear in Berlin and other European capitals that the foundational assumptions of their security, which have held for nearly 80 years, are now in serious doubt. The impetus for Merz's extraordinary proposal is the catastrophic military situation unfolding in eastern Ukraine. The collapse of the Ukrainian defensive lines west of Pokrovsk has sent shockwave through the corridors of power in Europe. For Germany, which has shed its post-Cold War reluctance to become a major military backer of Kyiv, the prospect of a complete Ukrainian defeat and a Russian military advance towards the border of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization is an existential threat. The crisis has exposed the stark reality that European nations, despite recent increase in defense spending, do not possess the military capacity to independently contain a revanchist Russia without the full weight of the United States military. This fear has been compounded by the perceived ambiguity of a new Trump administration's policy towards NATO and European security. President Trump's past criticisms of the alliance, coupled with his America First doctrine, have created a deep sense of unease. The appointment of Peter Hegseth as Secretary of Defense, an official who has openly questioned the wisdom of extending America's security guarantees so broadly, has done little to assuage these fears. European leaders like Merz are haunted by the possibility that in a moment of ultimate crisis, the United States might not honor its Article 5 commitment to mutual defense, leaving Europe to fend for itself. Chancellor Merz, a pragmatic conservative from the Christian Democratic Union Party, is under immense pressure both at home and across Europe to secure an ironclad public commitment from President Trump. His government faces a jittery public and a political position that is questioning the wisdom of Germany's robust support for Ukraine without a clear and reliable American backstop. Furthermore, leaders from NATO's eastern flank, particularly Poland and the Baltic states, have been making increasingly frantic appeals to Berlin and Paris to press Washington for clarity. They see Germany as Europe's preeminent economic power, as having a unique responsibility to leverage its relationship with the United States to secure the continent's defense. Merz's call for the Alaska summit is therefore not just a German initiative, but an act of leadership on behalf of a deeply worried continent. He is attempting to preempt a crisis of confidence in the NATO alliance by forcing a direct conversation before the situation deteriorates further. The German Chancellor's agenda for the proposed talks is expected to be brutally direct, focusing on three critical areas: a joint strategy to manage the fallout from the war in Ukraine, a definitive reaffirmations of the U.S. commitment to NATO's collective defense, and the development of a coordinated Western response to the strategic challenge posed by the newly unified BRICS bloc. The initial reaction from the White House to the German proposal has been studiously non-committal. A brief statement indicates that President Trump appreciates the Chancellor's perspective and that the request is under review. This cautious response masks what is reported to be an intense internal debate within the Trump administration. The foreign policy team is split between two competing schools of thought. On one side are the traditional internationalists, represented by figures like Secretary of State Marco Rubio. Secretary Rubio, while a staunch conservative, is a firm believer in the importance of America's alliance system as a force multiplier for U.S. influence. He understands European anxieties and is likely arguing in favor of holding the summit to reassure allies and project an image of Western unity. He would see the meeting as an opportunity to shape the president's more isolationist instinct and to forge a common front against Russia and China. He would counsel that abandoning Europe would create a power vacuum that America's adversary would eagerly fill, ultimately harming U.S. interests. On the other sides are the America First realists and nationalists, whose most prominent voice is Secretary of Defense Peter Hegseth. This camp views America's overseas commitment, particularly in Europe, as a costly and unnecessary drain on U.S. resources. They argue that European nations are wealthy enough to provide for their own defense and that the United States should focus its attention and military powers on domestic priorities and the direct challenge from China in the Pacific. Secretary Hegseth would likely view Merz request with deep skepticism, seeing it as another attempt by European allies to entangle the United States in their regional problems and to extract security guarantees without paying their fair share. He might advise President Trump to use the meeting not to offer reassurance, but to deliver a blunt message that the era of the U.S. subsidizing European security is over. The decision on whether to accept the summit invitation will therefore be a major early indicator of which faction holds greater sway over President Trump's foreign policy thinking. The internal struggle between the State Department and the Pentagon over the direction of American grand strategy is now playing out in real time. The choice of Alaska as the venue is a masterstroke of political stagecraft by Chancellor Merz. By suggesting a location on American soil, he has shown differences to the U.S. president. However, by choosing Alaska, he is moving the conversation away from the established protocols of Washington, D.C., and placing it in a context of raw, untamed power politics. Alaska is the front line of America's own defense against potential Russian aggression. It is home to critical early warning radar systems, missile defense interceptors, and advanced fighter squadrons tasked with intercepting Russian military aircraft that frequently test North American airspace. Holding the meeting at a location like Joint Base Elmendorf-Richardson in Anchorage would serve as a powerful nonverbal reminder that the threat posed by Russia is not a distant, abstract problem for Europeans alone. It would subtly frame the discussion not as Europe asking for favor, but as two key pillars of the Western world meeting to discuss a shared and proximate threat. It is a strategic attempt to shift President Trump's mental map, drawing his focus to America's own northern border and the strategic competition unfolding in the Arctic, a region where Russia has been increasingly assertive. Beyond the immediate crisis in Ukraine, Chancellor Merz is seeking to initiate a broader strategic dialogue about the future of the West. The recent unification and bold pronouncement of the expanded BRIC bloc have created a new and formidable challenge. The coordinated push for de-dollarization and the creation of an alternative global financial system threaten to erode a key pillar of American power, a development that directly impacts the U.S. Treasury under Secretary Scott Bessent and the Commerce Department under Secretary Howard Lutnick. The German government believes that only a united and coordinated Western economic strategy can counter this challenge. Merz wants to discuss joint investment initiative, a common approach to technology standard, and a strategy to offer developing nations in the global south a more attractive alternative to the financing offered by China and the BRICS new development banks. He understands that President Trump is highly attuned to the issue of economic competition and trade, and he hopes to frame the BRICS challenge in terms that will resonate with the president's own Make America Great Again agenda, arguing that Western prosperity is inextricably linked and under direct assault. Similarly, the growing military cooperation within the BRICS framework, particularly between Russia and China, necessitates a more integrated Western defense posture. Chancellor Merz is expected to present a German plan for a significant increase in European defense industrial capacity, but to argue that this can only succeed as part of a renewed transatlantic bargain. This would involve greater specializations among NATO members, joint weapon development programs, and a more equitable systems of burden sharing that goes beyond a simple 2% of GDP spending target. He will likely appeal to President Trump's business acumen, framing the alliance as a strategic investment that yields immense return in terms of global stability and American security. He must convince the president and his more skeptical advisors, like Secretary Hexet, that a strong and capable Europe is not a liability, but a vital strategic asset for the United States in an increasingly dangerous world. This is a difficult and delicate argument to make to an administration that is predisposed to view allies as transactional partners at best and freeloaders at worst. The stakes for the proposed Alaska summit could not be higher. If President Trump refused the meeting, or if the talks end in failure, it could trigger a catastrophic crisis of confidence within NATO. It would signal to the world, and most dangerously to Moscow, that the Western alliance is fractured and that its collective defense guarantee is no longer credible. This could embolden Russia to escalate its war in Ukraine and potentially to test NATO's resolve elsewhere, such as in the Baltic or through hybrid warfare tactic against Germany itself. It would also accelerate a trend towards strategic autonomy in Europe, but from a position of weakness and panic rather than strength and confidence. The European nations would likely scramble to form smaller, ad hoc security pact and pursue their own national interests, leading to a fragmented and less secure continent. For Germany, a failure would be a devastating blow to Chancellor Merz's leadership and would likely lead to a painful and divisive national debate about its foreign and security policy, potentially even prompting calls for Germany to acquire its own nuclear deterrent, a scenario that would destabilize Europe profoundly. Conversely, a successful summit in Alaska could reinvigorate the transatlantic alliance for a new era. A strong, clear, and public joint declaration from Trump and Merz, reaffirming the sanctity of Article 5 and outlining a unified strategy on Russia and China, would send a powerful message of resolve to the world. It would reassure nervous allies, deter potential adversary, and stabilize a volatile global situation. It would provide the political top cover for Ukraine's supporters to redouble their effort and would pour cold water on the Kremlin's hopes of a divided West. A positive outcome would bolster Chancellor Merz, standing as a leading European statement, and would demonstrate that the new Trump administration, despite its rhetoric, can be engaged as a constructive, if demanding, partner. It would prove that the historic alliance, born from the ashes of World War II, can adapt to face the challenge of the 21st century. The entire world is now watching to see whether the American president will agree to meet the anxious German chancellor on the cold, strategic frontier of Alaska, and what the future of the West will look like when they merge. The path chosen will have consequences that echo for decades. Many of my listeners, like 70%, have subscribed to my YouTube channel. And so many of you don't even know that you haven't subscribed. And that is actually what makes the show going. It's almost like you're making a donation to the show. So that's why I ask again and again, because it enables us to grow and grow and grow. And we're going for the long haul here. And listen, if this is your first time listening to World Global Conflict, you don't have to subscribe. You guys, your first ones on me. But if you have watched this show before, it's like you are a freeloader now. So all I would ask you is, if you have seen this show before and you like it, help me, help my team here. Hit that subscribe and like button now, and we will continue to build this show for you. That I swear. Thank you to all of you guys who have subscribed. It means a lot to me. Thank you so much. That's all for me for today. I will see you soon. Bye for now.